Cincinnati Art Museum docent Joyce Mueller was inspired by the museum itself in the composition of this haiku. Pop into pictures. A new world awakes for you. Enjoy the journey.
This poem was written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mary Leroy and was inspired by Thomas Gainsborough's The Cottage Door. Outside the family's country home, their puppy afoot among the children's fray, elders' contentedness brightens the dusky surroundings.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mikey Phillips was inspired by Georgie O'Keeffe's My Backyard when composing this haiku. Of course it is so. These canyon hills and buttes, hoodoos, are all my backyard.
This poem was written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Zore Zand and was inspired by John Henry Twatman's Old Holly House, Cos Cob. A house known to artists. White, bluish, fresh snow takes over. Beautiful silence.
This haiku, written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Kit Anderson, was inspired by Fruits and Vegetables by Jacob Lawrence. Women's work, of course. Picking, choosing, feeding all. Food for body and soul.
Mickey Phillips, a Cincinnati Art Museum docent, was inspired by Andrew Wyeth's Henry Teal in writing this haiku. Only a window, wide open for memories. No one left but me.
This haiku, written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nancy Hurst, was inspired by Venetian Lace Makers by Robert Frederick Bloom. Flashing hand to hand, bobbins keep tempo with tongues, patterns etched in brains.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mikey Phillips was inspired by Eastman Johnson's Play One for Me when composing this haiku. That was beautiful, showing what the world can be. Now play one for me.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips was inspired by the Tendia Retablo made by Jan and Katerina von Hemison. I bring faith to life. See the pictures, hear the tales. Now go, and now do.
Mickey Phillips, a Cincinnati Art Museum docent, was inspired by The Puritan by Augustus Saint Gaudens for this haiku. Tall hat, long cloak, stern face. Time to judge whoever sins. No longer love's face.
This haiku, written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips, was inspired by Sunday Morning in Virginia by Winslow Homer. Yes, I remember. Yet memories bring sadness. Let the children read.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips was inspired by Moses J. Ezekiel's Eve hearing the voice when composing this haiku. Why come to me, Lord? Unfair to blame me only. Blame it on the snake. Cincinnati Art Museum docent Kit Anderson was inspired by Van Dyck's Agostino Spinola, Count of Tassarolo, when composing this haiku. He gazes fierce, askance, firm hands armed and steady, master of his world.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips was inspired by the artwork Hercules and Antaeus by Stefano Maderno. I raise you from earth. No more support, no more love. Now feel my embrace.
This poem was written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Kit Anderson and was inspired by Maria van Oosterweg's flower Still Life. Lush life, too fleeting, bright blooms fade and wither fast, wings beat once, then die. This haiku was written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips and was inspired by Henry Farney's The Unwelcome Guests. Friend or foe, who knows? Cautious, wary, nerves on edge. What do I do now?
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Camille Fry was inspired by Marino Marini's Cavallo when composing this haiku. Horse cries a nicker as he expresses his stress. His body fails him.
This poem was written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips and was inspired by Dale Chihuly's Rio delle Torricelle chandelier. Circles in circles, blue shapes almost within reach. Hope it doesn't fall.
CAM docent Camille Fry was inspired by this guanyin from China for this haiku. Soft, sweet, inward smile. Scarves, jewelry, adornments drape. Compassionately.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Anu Mitra was inspired by Ruben Nakian's Hecuba. She stands ravagedly in life's dark, gooey chaos, her crown strong, defiant.
Camille Fry, a CAM docent, was inspired by Karen Lamont's Seated Dress for this poem. Classic in stature, fragile, diaphanous, pure. Her essence remains.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nancy Hurst was inspired to compose this haiku by Edward Henry Potast's A Sailing Party. Squinting in sun's glare, scudding clouds, wheeling gulls' cries, wind-whipped clothes, clutched hat.
Mary Cassatt's baby in dark blue suit, looking over his mother's shoulder, inspired CAM docent Nancy Hurst to write this haiku. Fussy babe held close, comforted by mother's scent, safe, secure, peace reigns.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nancy Hurst was inspired by Vincent van Gogh's Undergrowth with Two Figures. Lovers arm in arm, walk 'neath leafy canopy, dappled with sunlight.
Nancy Hurst, a Cincinnati Art Museum docent, was inspired by John Singer Sargent's Two Girls Fishing in writing this haiku. Girls wielding cane rods, perched upon a rocky bank, thoughts jarred by nibbles.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nancy Hurst was inspired to write this haiku by Grant Wood's Daughters of Revolution. Prim, proper biddies, smug about their lineage, shun interlopers.
Zore Zand, a CAM docent, was inspired by Franz Klein's Horizontal Rust in writing this haiku. Light chooses the ugly, giving warmth to cold, rusty steel. The painter holds it.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Zore Zand was inspired by the bowl of Darius the Great. A golden lotus welcomed kings' lips of the past, red wine and glamour.
Vincent van Gogh's Undergrowth with Two Figures inspired docent Beth Neiman for this haiku. Two walk together through glorious floral woods. She turns. Do they love?
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nancy Hurst was inspired to compose this haiku by Camille Pizarro's Cabbage Patch Near the Village. Bare trees, frosty air, peasants harvest leafy orbs, humble soup soon boils.
CAM docent Zore Zand was inspired by Jules Breton's Last Flowers for this haiku. Rescuing the last, sunlight softly caressing, beauty in the snow.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nina Kiefer was inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe's My Backyard. Blue sky, rainbow hills, then a line of bright green trees. Where does her yard end?
This haiku, written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips, was inspired by Horizontal Rust by Franz Klein. Powerful dark lines, the final test of painting, feeling what I feel.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Phil Weintraub was inspired by A Venetian Woman by John Singer Sargent when composing this haiku. Coy and coquettish, flirting with the artist's brush, inviting him in.
Phil Weintraub was inspired by The Daughters of Revolution by Grant Wood for this haiku. Stuffy and aloof, they've lost the sense of being an American.
This haiku, written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips, was inspired by Christmas Morning, Breakfast by Horace Pippin. Holding arm to paint, more than a year to finish, holiday breakfast.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Phil Weintraub was inspired by Anselm Kiefer's Montsalvat when composing this haiku. From death's destruction, holy redemption awaits. After the journey.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips was inspired by Grant Wood's Daughters of Revolution. Living off the past, but contributing nothing. It's all about show.
Art Museum docent Nina Kiefer was inspired by Jean-Francois Millet's Going to Work with this poem. Off to work, hi-ho. Peasant life is hard, it's true, but God sees us through. Chaim Soutin's View of Surette inspired docent Mickey Phillips with this poem. Fleeing the Germans, yet with no money, no friends, escape to nowhere.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Phil Weintraub was inspired by Pablo Picasso's Still Life with Glass and Lemon. Is it confusing? Or a new way to see things? Your eyes tell the truth.
This haiku, written by Cincinnati Art Museum docent Nina Kiefer, was inspired by Last Flowers by Jules Breton. Rose of summer fades, yet blooms in a young girl's cheek. Winter kills not all.
Cincinnati Art Museum docent Mickey Phillips was inspired by Edward Hopper's Sun on Prospect Street, Gloucester, Massachusetts, when composing this haiku. Only the lonely, sun and shadows, no one out. Life goes on inside.